Congress is clashing with the Obama administration over who should control efforts to fight climate change, or whether there should even be control. The Environmental Protection Agency sides with those who believe man-made greenhouse gases could lead to dangerous global warming, so those gases should be controlled. It plans to start regulating them as soon as possible. Congress failed last year to pass a bill that would have capped greenhouse gas emissions, and some in Congress feel that should have been the end of that.
The administration, EPA, is trying to regulate what they were unable to legislate.
Republican Fred Upton is the powerful House Energy and Commerce chair. He worries the EPA slapping regulations on industries could cause their costs to soar and cripple the economic recovery.
It could have a very severe impact on job growth in America. In fact, some studies show that we could actually lose up to 500,000 jobs.
He calls the EPA plan to start regulating greenhouse gases an unconstitutional power grab. Tim Phillips, head of the conservative Americans for Prosperity, agrees, saying under the Founding Fathers' carefully designed system of checks and balances, executive branch bureaucracies were never meant to be free of Congress's control.
They did not mean for unelected, unaccountable bureaucracies to be out there unilaterally doing what they wanted to do.
But former EPA official David Hawkins says the Supreme Court ruled the EPA has to take action if the science shows greenhouse gases are a danger.
This is not a power grab. This is EPA following the law as interpreted by the Supreme Court of the United States. That's not a power grab. That is obeying the law.
Upton and his allies in Congress are voting to stop the EPA plan to regulate. They see the agency's move as just the first in a liberal agenda to control what energy Americans will use and what they pay for it.
We don't think that an unelected government bureaucracy with no act of Congress should be able to step in with their bureaucrats and begin telling business owners, private Americans, whether it's your lawnmower or what kind of SUV you may or may not want to drive, the size of your home, where you ought to set your thermostats, how much your utility bills ought to be.
Phillips says President Obama and his allies in the past have stated they want to drive up the cost of power from fossil fuels to push Americans away from them.
They want to change our behavior, and they're willing to use coercive means, government regulation, higher prices, higher taxes, more regulations, to make coal and oil, the energy we get from them, more expensive. It's wrong. It's an ideological agenda.
But Hawkins believes if America does move to greener energy and more fuel efficiency, it will actually save Americans money in the long run. For instance, to drive.
Even though the price at the pump for these cleaner fuels may be somewhat higher in terms of pennies per gallon, the total amount of gallons that we need to do what we want to do with our lives every week and every month will go down.
But costs aside, Hawkins points out most scientists, even ones who reported to the Republican Bush administration, say global warming is a danger that must be fought.
The science is real, the threat is real, and if we don't act, the threat is going to get larger and larger each year that we delay.
Phillips doubts the truth of claims about global warming and man's ability to actually stop it by controlling greenhouse gases.
They claim it will drive down the temperature like 0.1/100th of a degree. They claim that. The science isn't even settled on that. You've seen the controversies and the cover-ups that coming out of England on ClimateGate.
A subcommittee of Upton's recently took up the scientific debate over climate change by having 4 true believers in global warming and 3 skeptics testify. Nothing was settled. The true believers claimed
climate warming over the last century is unequivocal and primarily human-caused.
We and our children and grandchildren will experience more floods, droughts, and heat waves. We will see severe impacts on food, water, energy, and security.
The skeptics said such talk
rest on fearful claims, doomsday predictions of devastating consequences.
But someone has to decide what to do about global warming, if anything, and Upton says the answer is clear.
We in the Congress should make the decision, not unelected bureaucrats.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.